Well, hey everybody, Wes McDonald here. I want to welcome everybody to day 4 of the 10-day flat rate challenge. I can't believe we're already here in day 4, Ken. How are you?
I am doing good, and it is so interesting to be here. I am enjoying the conversations you and I are having, the conversations we're having from our sponsors, and we've got some great sponsors. Today, we're really privileged. We got Ed McLaughlin coming to us today with Predictive Insight. I'm looking forward to that conversation. It's an interesting story. I used to work for Ed. I worked at Sharp. I worked at Sharp when he was the president of Sharp, and those were probably the best years that I had at Sharp.
Until he fired you, right?
No, he didn't fire me. There were changes that took place that I was not as much a fan of.
Oh, I'm only teasing you, but that's really neat. That's an interesting fact that I did not know. And I often start a lot of my podcast interviews with an interesting fact that people may not know about people, right? So, for example, I'm an identical twin, and that usually causes a lot of fear and surprise with people because it's like, oh no, it's bad enough with one of you. Now there's 2 in the world. So I'll have to remember to ask Ed if he's got an interesting fact to share with us today that people may not know. For everyone that's on the live stream today, I want to thank you so much for coming in for day number 4. And Ken, I have been absolutely shocked and amazed by the interest in this so far. Right, in day 1, we started out. I think we had just over 100 attendees. On day 2, that number jumped over 200 attendees, and it was about 225 or 26 yesterday. So really interesting. And, also I will say that this is a global event, right? I'm just going to put up our little map here. I always love showing this off. Let's see if I can remember how to do this. Somewhere in here. I can do this. There we go. So think about live streams, everyone. You're going to see me flub up as we move through this too. There we go. Look at our nice world map that we have here. We have attendees from all over the world. And Ken, I know that you said yesterday we got a few more from different parts of the world. I'm not sure if we had any others come in, but look at that. Norway, the UK, France, Spain, Saudi Arabia, the UAE. I know that the homework assignment that we put out in day 2, I did get some responses from that part of the world, which is awesome. Australia, South Africa, the USA, and even the humble part of the world where I'm from, here in Canada, right? So for everybody from around the world, thank you so much for working with us. And Ken and I are so thrilled to be able to do this at no charge to you. We couldn't do that without our sponsors, and we're going to introduce you to those in a couple of minutes here. One of the things that I want to do is make sure that you understand with this live stream that you can post your comments. And if you have any questions throughout, we are actually going to be having a look at those and try and answer as many of them as we can. And I can see already this morning, it looks like we're moving pretty fast. Everybody is starting to add one. Oh, here's one from a Facebook user. Everyone has worked for Ed. That's great. Ed has been a powerhouse in this industry for, well, as long as I can remember, as long as anyone can remember. So I'm sure a lot have. And Richie, good to see you again. And it says we passed. That's awesome. And what do we have here? Jer is back. Man, Wes must have bought all the cruise shirts he could find. Yeah, I am known as the funny shirt guy, and you're going to see a few more of these before the before the end. So without further ado, I do want to bring in one of our sponsors. And as I said, we couldn't do this without sponsorship. As we talked about yesterday, when we talk about being sort of a thought leader in the space and, being able to be seen as people that are leading a movement, you don't get to choose that. You have to put in the work, and you have to give things to people, and you have to make sure that you're delivering way more value than you're asking for in return. And so this series, which is free, and all the knowledge we're giving over the 10 days, which, by the way, we charge for with our clients, couldn't be possible without our sponsors. So I'm going to bring one in right now. Let's see here. And Ed McLaughlin, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much for making sure that we can actually provide this to everyone that's, trying to learn, right? I've known you for a lot of years. I'm telling you, I really miss being able to see you at the shows. The Canadian border is still shut down. So, but I think in October I'm going to one. I'm going to try and get out to the the meeting in North Carolina for the BTA. I think that's in
Yeah,
October.
well, that's right around the corner from me, so I will make sure I attend that. That's a car ride, but we'll be at Sean and I will both be at the National BTA meeting in August.
Well, that's great. And
Yeah,
unfortunately, that's one I still won't be able to attend, but I look forward to hopefully seeing you live and in
I hope
person.
you can. Yeah, absolutely. It's been a while. Last time I
Yeah.
remember, we were standing out on the deck of one of the boats on one of the events, and you were using your electronic cigarette, which you still use, I believe.
I do. Yeah. I've got it right here on my desk, and it keeps me from the real thing. I'm not sure if it's that much better, but, I haven't died yet. So,
That's good. That's good. You keep
yeah, still
your
working on the electronic side. And, I've been pretty excited to watch what you've been doing, right? You certainly don't ever slow down. And most recently, the efforts that you're doing with Sean Cashmark and Predictive Insight. And
Mhm.
I have particular interest, as you know, in my past, I was a managed print specialist for a lot of years.
Right.
And I still do assessments, and I still have to gather, page counts and user counts and other things. And as you know, that hasn't always necessarily been the easiest thing or the most stable thing, right?
Right.
And so you're doing some really cool stuff on that side. When people thought there was no way to innovate something like page counts and meters, you figured out a way. And that's pretty cool. So maybe what I'll do is I'll just
Well,
give you
in
the
all
podium.
honesty, I mean, I like taking credit for things that I do, but I didn't do this. Uh, my, my success here is recognizing it and saying, "Hey, let's bring this to the United States." But even that wasn't my idea. Sean was way ahead of me on that by actually a couple of years. So
Well, I remember you sharing that as well. And I
yeah,
think what you're both
he's
doing
been
there is incredible, making it real here.
it is. Let me tell you what attracted me to EKM and so that it's really clear, Predictive Insight is essentially EKM in North America. Um, we I began looking at it roughly about a year and a half ago. And then in June, Sean and I got together. We finally found out that we were both working on the same thing. And we had worked together before too. As someone said earlier, everybody's worked for me at some point in time. And, but you're hanging around 50 years, sooner or later, you cross paths with just about everybody. But the thing that really attracted me to EKM and the Insight product is that it was not designed as a meter collector. It was designed to help manage accounts because the people at EKM at the time were consultants and they were managing enterprise accounts. And they wanted to find a way to reduce the stress on their manpower to manage the environment. And they wanted to find a way to manage printers the same way they would manage IT. And so this is the only DCA in existence in the world that has true asset management as part of the infrastructure. It was also built on an enterprise class framework. What does that mean for you? Well, simply those products that were built on .NET are subject to the constant pounding that we get from Microsoft these days on upgrades, and a lot of times it knocks the DCAs off, and it makes it very, very difficult to keep them up and keep them running. That's not a problem that exists with the EKM product. And mainly it's because one of the principal reasons is it's because it's on this firm enterprise class framework. And because they wanted to build it in a way that they could manage it so much more efficiently, the ratio of back office people to units or machines managed is one person for 8 to 10,000 devices versus the entire rest of the industry is roughly about one person to 3 to 4,000 devices.
That's crazy. What a difference.
Productivity is astounding. The ability to integrate and to do more with it from a supply management standpoint, from an alert standpoint, from a meter reading standpoint. And people say, well, wait, you're on a flat rate program. Who cares about the meters? Well, everybody should care about the meters because you really want to know where you are for a whole host of reasons, why you
Agreed.
want to know what the volume is there, and it needs to be accurate because the analogs, the algorithms are written in such a way inside, it almost sounds like a tongue twister, inside Insight. Uh, so, but they are written at a very high algorithm level, and they're so bloody accurate that they actually go page for page with the device's web pages. So if anyone wants to check the accuracy, you actually go into the web pages and see, and they are spot on all the time.
Isn't that
So
amazing?
it's utterly amazing. Not only the accuracy, but the efficiency that's created by the process itself. And now Insight is integrated into every operating system that's out there. There isn't anything that's run that we don't work with.
Well, I'll tell you what, I
TI's
can't
product.
wait to work with you on some of the newer assessments that I'm moving through, because I can tell you that both the meter accuracy, because of the way that they were being tracked in the past, and also the reliability in the platforms was always painful for me, and gets in the way. So this is a big deal, and I encourage anyone that's watching
Well,
today, if they haven't already talked to you, to make sure that they do.
and also the self-healing aspect. I mean, it's the only self-healing DCA in the world. And what it does is it looks for things that are going wrong, and if there's any corruption going on, it will stop itself, check the data, go back to the last known accurate information, and restart itself and use that data going forward. The other piece of it is 100% of the data gets through 100% of the time. There's no such thing as lost data. It doesn't happen because we use a point of presence in order to move the information from one spot to the other. And what that does is it checks both sides of the port to make sure that they're both available. It takes the data, sends the data. If anything happens, even in that nanosecond of the data being transferred, the power goes out or the network goes down. The minute the power comes back, all the data comes through because of store and forward and point of presence.
Yeah, and that is, truly something that the industry has always needed. And I love it when you take something and innovate it and make changes to something to actually improve our experience with it. Because when that happens, it improves the experience with our customers as well, right?
It helps them manage the environment better.
Right.
And that's what it's all about. My quest ever since I left Sharp has been to find ways to improve the back office, because it's the back office that's going to make the difference in your competitive advantage. And it used to just be the sales aspect, which we can help too, because we also help with, we can set up the accounts so that a sales rep's accounts are aligned directly to him. And then using the graphical user interface aspect of the DCA, they can do account reviews spot on, and it's their view all the time. They plug into the DCA, pull up their accounts, and they can sit down with an accountant and review it.
And that's going to be absolutely critical going forward. Hey, I got a few comments here I'm going to have a look at in here. Looks like we've got some folks letting us know where they are in from. So Dwayne, want to thank you for coming in from Seattle, Washington. Hopefully the weather is a little better than it is here. For those that tuned into the live stream yesterday, we had a snowstorm where I'm from. We actually got 10 or 15 inches after having mowed the lawn, twice and planted some flowers. And there's Kenneth. How you doing, Ken? There we go. Nelson's back from Grand Prairie, Texas. So good to have you back, Nelson. Hey, Ed, one thing I want to ask you quickly, specifically towards flat rate. So what can Predictive Insight do to help people as they're pursuing their flat rate journey to make that experience better for them and for their customers?
Well, probably the most important thing I think that we can help them do is take the burden off managing the rest of the information that they need to manage in there, such as the supplies, the replacement, supply replenishment, and accurate meter readings, and know that you've got the right structure for your flat rate program. I know that the people at NextEra have a really great program for putting all this stuff together. We enhance that by having the best management of the meter readings. So that's an added help. But particularly, I think it's the supply of the consumables, the management of the consumables.
Yeah, which is actually kind of a nice segue into where I'm going to go next, which is everything is a cost. So Ed, I can't thank you and Sean enough for supporting us on this flat rate journey that we're doing. and certainly encourage everyone to make sure that they get in touch with you and learn about the ways that you can help them, both with their flat rate offerings and, of course, their traditional cost per page offerings as well. So thank you so much.
I think the movement towards flat rate is such a logical thing to do. It takes confusion out for your customers, for your back office, and for you and for your marketing people. So, and there's profit in underutilization. So
there sure is. I love it. So once again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
That's so great. I have all day for, that guy. He's a consummate professional and always looking at, sort of the future of our industry and what kind of things can help dealers, more, right? I would say it would almost be impossible to find a person in the world, in our industry especially, that would have a bad thing to say about Ed McLaughlin. He's just one of the best people I've ever met.
I would agree with that. I enjoyed working for him. I've met him at several events since then, and he's always generous with his time and with his knowledge. He likes to help and share what he knows about the industry, which makes it very, very nice to know him.
It does. And hey, one of the things I'm going to do here now, I'm just going to move over and share a new screen, potentially. Let's see here. Share there. The one consideration that's really important for people here is that when we're entering the flat rate world, everything becomes a cost. And Ed kind of, segued into that rather nicely when he was talking about underutilization is profitable, right? And making sure that when we're working with these devices and the pages and everything else, that we're looking through the lens of everything being a cost. So I just want to, say at the hardware side, for example, the way sales reps are paid, and we talked about this a bit yesterday in the sales and compensation side, is to drive in bigger hardware, right? So the bigger, the better, because that's where that's when the commissions come in, right? That's not always necessarily the case in a flat rate environment, because that hardware piece is now a cost under that flat rate. And remember, the whole idea of flat rate is we're not going to charge more. So whatever the rate is, that's what it should be. And there shouldn't be excuses at the end of, the month for why it's more expensive or why it didn't come in where it needed to be, right? And I will show that in another slide as we kind of dig a little deeper into that to look at a hardware scenario based on a device which a sales rep may typically try and sell or get away with versus the right piece of equipment for that particular deal, and how much more profitable it is to do that, right? The other thing for consideration is that pages are a cost, obviously, and color pages more so than anything. And we've talked about this a little bit, but I really want to hammer it home, is that this idea of being able to control and guide the customer in the what, why, and how that they're printing is really important if you want to increase profitability and also generate some additional savings for that customer, right? And Ken, you know this, like when I'm building flat rate proposals, I love to give customers three options, right? Option number one is, here's the configuration if we just let you print the way that you usually do. Here's what that costs. Option number two is, if you let us do something very simple, like control the amount of color, based on your web and email printing, well, that's price number two. And price number three, the best price, includes us actually installing secure release on the devices so people have to authenticate when they get there, and also putting in a piece of software like Adobe Lean Print or something else to be able to control the amount of toner that's actually going on the page, right? And as we all know, typically people, once they have three options in front of them, might take the middle one most often, right? And but that idea that pages now become this opportunity for us to further drive savings and to further drive profitability, right? And the service side, Ken, this better than anybody else, right? That servicing equipment and taking care of that equipment obviously is a huge piece of it. I know I love listening, to Wes and Bud at Nexera speak about these kind of things, about the human cost of what that service component is, right?
Yep, and that is absolutely true. And this is, again, becomes one of the things that flat rate really makes things better for the dealers. And this is, again, you got to wrap your mind around it. But in a typical scenario, if you need to replace a piece of equipment, you can bring in a piece of used equipment. As long as you have devices that meet the customer's needs, it doesn't have to be new. And you can get out of the constant sales and upgrade cycle of existing equipment where we drop the service so we can put new hardware in. And then we give up a piece of equipment that we're really good at servicing and put in something that we got to learn how to service. We can reduce the complexity. One of the things, again, thank you for the slide there, Wes. You know where I was going. Another piece of this is that too often dealers, when they think about managed print and flat rate, is they think that they're going to have to keep the customer's existing machines in there. And what I recommend to dealers is you go in and you buy out the customer's fleet. And then you go through and you look at each device and think, is this a product I want to service? Or is it a product that's got a really low page cost? And if the answer is not yes to both of those, you get them out and you start replacing it with refurbished devices. There are several wholesalers that are really good at providing, refurbished wholesale printers. And you can go in and you get rid of the high cost, let's call them stepchildren devices, and you bring in you got me a little there, but you bring in devices where you can start to standardize the fleet so that you're supporting the same models throughout all of that client. But not only that, pretty much the same models throughout all of the devices you manage. It makes your training easier and your car stock easier.
Absolutely right. And the other part is, and I will touch on this in a slide a little later, is exactly what you spoke to, which is, there's this opportunity to be able to help people understand why standardization is important. And I'll get to that in a minute. But this idea, and you've said it before, Ken, that, it's a shame sometimes when we remove a device from the fleet when it becomes its absolute most profitable, right? That, because of the way that our sales reps are commissioned and because of the way that we have our, business set up for what we look at as net new opportunities, we get rid of a bunch of these devices just when they're starting to make us the most money that they ever have, right?
Absolutely. And that's, like I said, that having lived in the service side for most of the last 30 years, it just makes me insane.
The other thing that it helps with is obviously to make sure that you get the right device for the right purpose. And under the flat rate model, it's not as common just to try and swap out the entire fleet, right? That, what you try and do is make sure that the upgrades happen when they have new requirements. So if there is a function that they're trying to do in their workflow that simply can't be supported by the old device, then it's time to look at a new one. And the great thing with that is that it's an opportunity to upsell that customer on the seat price because they're looking for new functionality. It's not just because we're saying it's a new device, but it's actually supporting something, that they need to do, right? And I think that's so critical to make sure we're putting the right device for the right reason. All right, number 3, and I'm going to switch out my picture here for 1 second. This is pretty cool. I'm not sure if everyone knows what that acronym is, but you're going to know what it is at the end of this. All right. I'm going to put this up on the screen full time, for a second, because there is some math that I want to go through, and I want to make sure everybody can, see it. And basically, RPPM is the recommended pages per month that the manufacturers, obviously list for their devices. And this is actually taken from a real example that I went through for a device recommendation. And that's device X, where that was a $7,500 device. The recommended pages per month was 9,000, whereas the customer only actually needed a device that could do 5,500 pages a month. So if you look at a term of 48 months in that deal, and we look at a markup of 130%, that means that customer is spending $322 a month. And keep in mind, I do have a footnote down here. Let me see if I can hide this for a second. That the calculations are done basically including the mono and the color pages. Because remember, again, we're not just selling the device, that we're actually selling the flat rate, the whole solution, right? So the software in another situation may be included in this calculation as well. But the numbers do include the pages. So that customer is spending $322 a month. The gross profit for us for the term for the 48 months is $35.73. And that translates to 23% gross profit. Now, that's okay. And typically in a world where, they're trying to do a like for like replacement on a device, customers won't really pay too much attention to those numbers. But under the flat rate, they will. And it's important because, the one thing we extend to the customer is that we're going to put the right device in for what you need because it's good for both of us. You're going to save money and we're going to make more money. So for device Y, which is actually, a better recommended device for that environment, the cost is only $5,300. It's actually got a recommended pages per month of 7,000, where the actual is 5,500 because, again, that hasn't changed. The term's the same. But look what we can do here now, because it is a smaller device, is that we can actually increase our markup. So we've got a markup on this device, on this deal of 140% versus the 130% that we had in the original. And that means the customer's spending less. So, look at the numbers, Ken. They were spending $322 per month for that term. Now they're only spending $291. But the gross profit for the dealer also goes up. So instead of $3,500 for the term, they're getting $3,994. And so instead of 23% for their GP, they're actually getting 28%. And I think that's so important that when we look at it, because oftentimes when we're speaking with dealers looking at flat rate, there's a misconception that by putting in smaller devices, you're going to make less money, right? That by putting in the right device for the right reasons, that you're going to make less money. But what I love about this, because we're blending the pages, the device, and the software together for that flat rate price, that those pieces are no longer, taken apart. And what's really cool about this, Ken, is I did not change the cost per page in these examples, right? I didn't change that piece. So, even though we're still getting the same amount of profit on the deal for that piece, the overall profit of the deal is much better. And I just love this. For those that were in the live stream yesterday, I actually did share, for those that emailed us, a calculator that helps you actually, do these comparisons, right? So for everyone that is watching us live again today, certainly, if you'd like to be able to get your hands on that calculator, just email us. And I don't have it here right now, but maybe Ken, you can put it in the comments. But it's flatrate@westmcdonald.co. So flatrate@westmcdonald.co. And the only thing I ask in return is that once you've used the calculator, that you send me back your notes. How did it work for you? What did you discover? What did you learn? Those kind of things, right? Because the hope is at the end of this that you'll actually have learned quite a bit and are able to apply that to, whatever your flat rate ambitions are, right? And thanks, Ken, for putting that in there.
Yeah, I'll put it in the other two in just a second. But I did want to touch on that because the other piece of it that's hidden in what you just showed is that typically when you right size the device, its performance, and we'll look at some numbers on that tomorrow, but typically it performs better. And as it performs better, now your service costs went down. So not only have you increased your margin on the sales side of the equation, but you've also increased your margin in service. And so it is just, like I said, it is so important that you understand that. And I don't care how you sell. Right-sizing the machine is always going to be the better choice for your company. The only thing it hurts is your top line revenue, but it will improve your bottom line revenue. It will improve your service profitability, and it'll improve customer satisfaction because the machine that's right-sized will perform better. You'll have fewer calls, and the customer is going to be happier.
Yeah, but the truth is, top line revenue is very deceptive, right? And it's not the money we make; it's the money we get to keep. That's
exactly.
And what I love about doing it this way, though, is that we can still deliver savings to the customer at the same time. So, we talked about this in the sales and marketing aspect of it yesterday, but this alignment is just so sticky. That ability to be able to save the customer while we as a dealership make more money simply by doing the right thing, right? So models drive behavior. And unfortunately, the cost per page model does not drive that alignment. It never has. And it wasn't created to drive that alignment. But this model really is created to drive that alignment. Save the customer money and allow us to make some more, money as well, right? So certainly for anyone that's watching the live streams today, please list your comments. And if you have any questions about the math that we work through as we're going through these things, or if you have any suggestions or ideas yourself for things that you think are benefits of flat rate for both the customers and the dealers, we'd love to hear from you. So take the opportunity and remember that you can put those comments in there. One of the things I want to move on to now, just give me a second here. And Ken, you kind of talked about this a little bit earlier, and just let me find the graphic for it. Okay. You talked about this a little bit earlier, and that was this idea of owning the fleet, right? And I want to spend a little bit more time
Yeah.
talking about how this can be really important. And it does more than just give us ownership of the fleet. Now, one is that whenever we ask customers if we want to, standardize their fleet, the typical sales pitch has been because our stuff is better. Like, you should get rid of your other stuff because, our stuff is better. The brand that we carry is much more superior to, the brand that you already have in place. Well, under a flat rate program, that changes. So what we're saying to the customer is, hey, look, you know of examples of this in your life, right? Southwest is probably the most well-known example, where they were, really the first airline, at least that I know of, that standardized the entire fleet of airplanes to how many models of planes, Ken?
One.
One. And the reason that they did that was because it made the experience so much better for everybody. So for Southwest, they knew that they didn't need as many different kinds of pilots that were trained on different planes. That also meant the flight crew. And from your perspective in your world, that also meant the people servicing that equipment, right? Those airplanes.
Exactly.
Where those airplanes would fit in airports, right? They knew exactly what the footprint was everywhere they went around the world, because they had standardized on that. And certainly I wouldn't say in the managed print world that we want to standardize to one printer or one multifunction. But I will say that we can share that with the customer and let them know that the reason we need to standardize the fleet with approved devices, that doesn't necessarily mean all the same brand. I work with some dealers that actually have a pizza menu of different devices from manufacturers that they will support because their people are trained on them. They know how to service them, right? They know what the cost of servicing that equipment is over time. But at any rate, with the customer to have that conversation to say, look, I'm stepping up and I'm making sure that you don't have any overages, right? I'm giving you a predictable bill every single month. And all I ask in return is that we have the ability to make sure that the devices that we're actually servicing are ones that are going to be the most effective and efficient, for us. And it works for the customer because, like, hey, look, I can't put junk in there because if I do, remember, this is a flat rate contract. I don't make any additional money. I only lose money. So you can be guaranteed that everything I put in there is going to be reliable. It's going to do the job that it's supposed to do. And it's the right fit for the right purposes, right? Now, yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I was going to say, and along that too, part of the conversation can be with the customer is that where you have the opportunity to standardize them where they're all the same, not necessarily the same model, but the same manufacturer at least, is that you start to have standardized print drivers. Loading the papers is in many cases the same. There's so many advantages for the customer as well in having that standardized fleet.
And especially under a flat rate. I'm going to go back to the graphic for 1 second, and I'm going to get. I'm going to put us back in. One of the other things, Ken, that it does is gives us a new reason to be able to sell new equipment, right? So that, exactly. You talked about this idea of owning the fleet, and I absolutely love that idea, that people should have the ability to not have to worry about the pieces anymore, right? And that if they're not worried about the pieces anymore, let us put our pieces in, the ones that we're comfortable with servicing, the ones that we're comfortable will deliver everything that you're looking for. Because at the end of the day, the output is the only thing the customer is concerned with anymore, right? So no conversation about devices, no conversation about cost per page. The only conversation is about that budgetability, about that alignment, and about making sure that they're getting the right devices for, what their needs are, right? And how refreshing is that? Can you imagine that, being able to go into a customer and get the sales conversation away from why my device is better than your device?
Yeah, and there's just so many. I was going to say, sorry to interrupt there. There's so many reasons that flat rate changes the conversation. And I want to go back to something that was said yesterday. Was we were talking about, that you're playing a game and you have all these teams that have been playing the game a long time. You're new to the game. What you want to do is either change the rules or change the game. Because now they don't have the edge, and we could talk about, let's pick one of the manufacturers that's dominant in the marketplace maybe. once you change the conversation, it's no longer about the hardware. It's about what the customer really cares about, because they don't want to own they don't want to own copiers. They don't want to lease copiers. What they want is they want pages. And as long as you can get them pages through the doc feeder and get them scanned, get them copied, get them printed, that's all they want. So sell them what they want.
Yeah, and it's happening. As you know, one of the guests that we had on, Earl Everson with Elite Document Solutions, right? That's how he sells. That's how he's winning in a busy market like Chicago, is completely changing that conversation with flat rate, right? And of course, one of the OEMs, the leader that started the first sort of flat rate program from an OEM perspective, Konica Minolta, with their one rate program, right? And I can remember when that first came out, people were saying, oh, it's garbage. Customers aren't going to fall for it. There's this and everything else. Well, guess what? Customers are loving it, right? One rate is a very successful program because it's delivering not on what the dealers think the customer should get, but what on the customer thinks they should get, right? That's how they're winning. That's how Earl Everson is winning. That's how other people are winning, with the flat rate model. All right.
I love that thought.
I'm going to move on to another piece here. And I want to talk a little bit about adding some other things, because typically when we're selling under a cost per page program, we are worried about selling hardware. We're worried about selling cost per page. What we don't consider are those other things, those other software elements, which we can sell as well. So I'm going to bring this up here now. Now, software is really important for, a few reasons as you're doing your configuration for your hardware and your software. And as we spoke about earlier with Predictive Insight and what Ed and Sean are doing there, is that they are improving the experience with the software so that it's better for both the customer and for the dealer. And that's not the only place we can do it. The first one I have up there, I'm a huge proponent of this, is making sure that we incorporate some kind of rules and secure release. And I have seen this. So when I worked at Pitney Bowes, and when I worked for another organization in Oakville, and when I worked for NER Data as an MPS specialist, this is what I did. When I did assessments, I would also put in recommendations for this type of software. And then I got to watch what happened. So once we put rules in place, for color, for example, for email and web printing, there was a very real result, right? Those pages went to black and white. And a lot of people don't know this unless they're doing it. But when you install a secure release on those multifunction devices and make people authenticate before they get their print jobs, it reduces the total print output. Actually, maybe I'll ask for a comment on this one. I'll come back to it. How much do you think it is? So when we install a secure release on the multifunction devices, I would like somebody to please comment. Let me know what you think is the amount of total page reduction in that environment over the year. And we'll come back to that one. The second one is one that could be getting new legs because of the flat rate model, right? So, this is nothing new. Toner saver applications have been around for years. So the ability to put fewer pixels on pages, right? And when we're trying to sell that to a customer, oftentimes they'd say, well, your cost per page hasn't changed. So the only person really benefiting is you, right? Under a flat rate model where we're sharing those savings, now it becomes an incentive for the customer to be able to find an additional way to save some money. So if they're doing draft documents, if it's something that is not on a device, which is going to be printing stuff that is customer facing, which, let's face it, Ken, that's becoming less and less, right? People are sending out PDFs now. They're sending out digital documents. They're sending their video links, the days of, the beautiful sales glossy are probably behind us. So this idea of the toner saver, is definitely getting new legs. And guess what? When we put that into our package, we get to charge for that. So the third one is one that, go ahead, Ken.
Oh, not only do we get to charge for it, it reduces our toner output and our toner costs. So we make some additional margin with it.
Yes, it does. And I want to thank Clifford for adding a comment there. And these numbers, I absolutely love this. People never believe me because they think that I'm just a consultant, right? But I used to install this and see the results in field. And Clifford's absolutely right. So when you're from 30 to 50% total page reductions, and there's a few reasons that happens. One of them is that people don't realize how much print that comes out of a device goes instantly into the recycling bin, right? And I've done this myself, and I'm sure that people that are watching today have done this themselves as well. You have a board meeting coming up, and there's 10 people that are going to be in the boardroom. And so you've got your document ready, which you're going to be sharing with everybody. And you send it to the multifunction to print that off and get it ready. Only to realize as you're going over the document further that there's a few mistakes. One is on page 3, 7, and 4. But of course, guess what humans do, Ken? They don't just print off 3, 7, and 4. they reprint the whole thing. So again, the stuff that had mistakes, those 10 copies for those 10 people, that all goes into recycling, and then they get the fresh ones off the device. With secure release, that disappears because it will ask you when you're at the device terminal, which one do you want? Clearly it's the same document. You don't need both. What should I do with this one? Delete. Okay, I've deleted that. Now I'll print the one that you actually want. So that's number one. There's this tremendous amount of waste made simply by mistakes. The second thing is that when you add an extra step to anything, people think twice, right? So it's like, do I really want to print that thing off? Because I know I have to go to the device and authenticate at the device. So oftentimes they say no. Now, of course, if they really need to, they're going to. When they really need that print job, they're going to go authenticate at the device and they're going to get that print job. And so, so those, rates there. Got another one here, a Facebook user, I'm not sure who it is seeing rates of 27%, right? So these are very real for anyone that's out there that's actually installing this. And guess what? Under a flat rate program, that does nothing but benefit us, right? So remember, as we said earlier, everything is a cost now, right? What used to be a revenue line item is simply a cost line for that revenue that we're generating under the flat rate. The next one that I see there is document management is one that I think dealers are typically very familiar with. They probably have a solution in place. But this isn't slowing down. The idea of how we access and use documents is only accelerating, right? And I can remember years ago, Ken, I was an early adopter of the Google platform, right? And the one thing I loved about it was the ability to share documents. And I could share documents not as a downloaded thing, I sent an email, but something where the version was always fresh. So if I sent somebody a link for that document or some kind of access, I knew that anytime they accessed it, it was current, right? Extremely powerful. Well, guess what? Guess who's taking over that market space right now again, right? Office 365, anybody? Microsoft? That this has become the standardized way of how people are, sharing and keeping their document structures current. And obviously people have their own, but this is something you can sell. This is something you can add to that flat rate to be able to beef up that seat price. And as we've talked about throughout this series, the more elements that you have in that seat, the stickier it gets, right? And I have digital work. Yeah, go ahead, Ken.
I would say not only does it become stickier, and that's hugely important, and we'll talk later more about how to get so sticky that that the client will never get rid of you. You will own them. But the other piece of it is your competition doesn't know how you have your deal structured. And so it's no longer your client circulating your quote to 5 other dealers trying to see who will go to the lowest on price. You start to make it something that they can't easily compare to any other deal. And as one of my friends says, where there's mystery, there's margin. So you can start to go back to getting the kinds of revenue and pricing for a page that you used to get.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And the stickier we can get with these solutions, especially on the software side, to pack that in, because we're offering that flat rate. One of our sponsors that'll be speaking later this week, Great America Financial, they did a phenomenal job in the early days of the flat rate world, being able to build that stuff and pack that stickiness into how they finance those deals, right? And the beauty is that when the customer gets their invoice every month, guess how many line items there are? One, right? It's, even though all of these elements were built into the quotes and built into how they, actually secure the financing for that deal, the monthly invoice is just one line item. Here's what you're going to pay for all of the services. And that's really critical because, to your point, we want to make it as difficult as possible for competitors to be able to unpack it and compete. And this is another reason I'm a big believer. I have There are some, and I'm not saying there's a right way or a wrong way to do this, right? You'll all have to decide that for yourselves. But I believe that simply converting from cost per page to a flat rate based on their current usage and doing nothing else is a big mistake. And I believe that because it makes it far too easy for a competitor to come in and underbid you. So, they'll go in, the customer will say, I don't know how they, built this quote, but, basically they're charging me $42 a seat. And I'll say, oh, okay, well, what kind of things did they do? Did they put some software in place to do certain? No, they just took my current print volumes and decided that they could take a safe bet with $42, per seat. Okay, well, I'll do it for 40. And then on the back end, I'll find a way to make sure I can, drive the cost out of the toner or whatever, right? It's instead of just being a page, it is a flat rate, but nothing's been changed. Nothing's been done to help the customer and make it stickier with those elements, right? And it looks like we've got a comment here from a Facebook user. More importantly, there's no way for the competition to know the monthly or annual print volume. Exactly, right? Because with no meter reads, the client doesn't even know their print volume. And you know what I think is great about that comment, Ken? Nobody cares, right?
Exactly.
It's funny. When I first started doing testing with the flat rate model, when I would actually work with customers and send out surveys and speak to them, I would say, hey, look, what's more important to you? A predictable fixed monthly bill. In other words, I'm going to give you a bill that you can take to the bank, a single invoice every month for, 12 months or once a quarter or whatever. And you can budget for that. Or do you want to talk more about pages? And those people that were administering those in those customer accounts, it was a no-brainer. They're like, please, just give me that fixed monthly bill, right? Because meters are nobody's friend. And we've talked about this. The meters are our friend for cost perspective, but from a billing perspective, very difficult because the customer, no matter what we put in place, has to recount those, right? They have to go back and say, okay, well, let me look at those meters and make sure that they're accurate. Let me make sure that I'm actually paying what I should. So yeah, whoever that is on Facebook, I can't see your name because it's a Facebook restriction, but thank you very much for that. It's absolutely right. Just completely get the conversation away, from pages, right? All right. Well, that was fast and furious today. And, hopefully we've given you some things to think about both on the hardware side and the software side as you start to build out these programs. And I can't thank Predictive Insights enough, Ed McLaughlin and Sean Cashmark for supporting us on this day. And if you're watching this on YouTube or LinkedIn or Facebook and you're not registered, I certainly encourage you to do so. And I know that in the comment section that there is a link for this. You can still register. And if you register, there's a couple of benefits. One is we've got a $250 giveaway on the last day of the challenge. So you could win 250 greenbacks. And the second reason is that on the website, once you're registered, you'll be able to have access to all of the past videos. So they'll be in a nice, tidy place for you to be able to access all of this wonderful stuff that we're doing and sharing through the 10-day challenge. So make sure that you do that. The other thing that I encourage you to do is if you want your journey to go faster, reach out to Ken and I. We've already set up several meetings with people that have said, I love this challenge, but we need to get going now. So if you need to get going now, just reach out to us. You can reach out to me at flatrate@westmclellan.co. And also Ken has put a link in the chat section as well.
And there's
Oh, it was Art Post. Hey, Art, thanks for that. So our mystery Facebook user is Art Post, and really appreciate that, brother. And miss you and hope you're doing well.
And if for those that are watching it on our website in the community that's set up there is a big button that says book a call. And the call is free. And when you walk away from the call, you will know more than you know now. You'll know more than you will know at the end of this challenge because we're going to share information, help you to think through your process in a one-on-one basis. So it's free and it's valuable. So you want to definitely take advantage of it.
That's right. And I certainly encourage everyone to make sure you dial in tomorrow. And this is really exciting. We've got BI Services coming in tomorrow, Nexera, as our sponsor. And we're going to be talking about service. So this is Ken's wheelhouse. And I really look forward to having that conversation specifically around the service side of things. And once again, thank you to everybody for coming in for day 4 of the Flat Rate Challenge, and can't wait to see you for day 5. So be well, everybody.
We'll see everybody tomorrow.